Good morning, everybody. This is the EHPA's annual statistics webinar. We're very happy to have you with us. I understand that at least from a registration perspective, we have nearly 200 people that are interested in what the heat pump markets are doing, what we are confronted with when it comes to policy, and what industry and the Commission thinks. And that's why I'm very happy not to have to do this by myself. And I think it also makes it more lively and interesting. With me, we have Josephine Van Besler, my head of EU affairs, and we also have Hervé Pierret representing the manufacturer Daikin, and as a very critical sparring partner and long-term, what could I say, energy aficionado is Nils Ladefoged from the European Commission, who was available on short notice. You will realize that we originally had Antonio Lopez Nicolas, but due to the fact that the Fit for 55 package will be published next week, it seems everybody in the Commission is super busy. So a special thanks goes out to Nils for making himself available on such a short notice. But without any further ado, because it's not too much time that we have, I want to start, and I will share my screen just now. Oh, let's switch off this phone. Sorry for that. It's only 1 year that we had a lockdown, so I'm not too used of preparing myself properly. So now you should see the screen, right? Is that correct? Very good. Then we just start. So I want to start by saying that the future of heating is already here. I am quite convinced that the technologies that we need from a principal perspective, from the perspective of the technology, is available and is with us. And I would dare to say that we are entering the century or the decade of heat pumps. This is a picture by Mr. Callebaut, an architect that I really like for his future-orientated drawings. And I think what we need to do is we have to draw a beautiful picture. And this is not by accident. If you follow the developments in Paris, then I think Paris is going to be one of the countries that is moving fastest into a very green and a very attractive metropolis. I want to say that heat pumps are everywhere. We are discussing more or less commercial and residential applications, industrial applications, and heat pumps in district heating. But you also find them increasingly often and very broadly represented in white goods and even in electric cars, where they are used for battery management. And I know from personal experience that if you have a heat pump in a car, then your battery range is increasing by 10, maybe even 20%, depends on the temperature and the way you drive. Heat pumps have a number of benefits that we find interesting. They provide renewable energy. They are very energy efficient. So if we want to use electricity for heating in combination with ambient energy or waste energy, then the heat pump is the best available technology. And of course, due to the fact that they don't use any fossil energy at the point of operation, there's also very little CO2 emission. Of course, that depends on the electricity mix, but electricity is greening really fast. So also that we don't see as a challenge anymore. On top of things, this slide here shows that heat pumps are also providing balancing function to the electric grid, and that is something that I find super important. If you have read the news, you have seen that in this year, the European, I think it was last year, Europe has generated as much electricity from renewable sources as never before. So we're really moving very fast into a direction where many small generators and increasingly often also larger generators are providing volatile or not stable, let's say, electricity from green sources, and that needs to be balanced. And putting heat pumps into this concept, putting heat pumps into buildings, then using these buildings as active nodes in such an energy grid that is integrated, that integrates electricity and heat, and of course also cooling, is something that is very sensible because we want stable and sustainable energy supply. Then there is also additional benefits from the technology. If you live in a city that has a lot of air pollution, then the heat pumps will reduce that. I had the discussion this morning. I read that Canada is about to ban fossil cars by 2035, if I remember correctly. And if you consider that a diesel car is basically only a fossil boiler, a mazout boiler on wheels, then maybe the heating system is the next topic that will be addressed by governments when it comes to air quality. But also indoor air quality is getting an increasing importance, especially if since we are seeing the effects of global warming. We're seeing that quite often it's getting very warm outside and you want to protect yourself inside with a better climate. And so then if you have a ventilation system, maybe an air conditioning system, and if you take all this into perspective and put it together and you say, I need heating, I need cooling, I need hot water, how can I do this in the most energy efficient way? Then a heat pump that provides heating and cooling at the same time is a good choice. And if you need cooling, always consider what do you do with the waste heat. A cooling device where the waste heat is discharged into the environment will probably in the future not be a good idea, because we are producing thermal pollution from that perspective. And if the dual need for both energy sources is necessary, then we should have an integrated solution for that. One word to the association. The EHPA is a sector organization. We are representing more than just industry. We also have members from consultancies, from research and development associations, companies and universities. We have utilities and and we have national associations. So we're very broad when it comes to representing the heat pump industry as a whole, and we can also answer quite a few questions that you may have when it comes to a specific question that is applicable to a member state or a question that is applicable to a certain technology. We're looking, as I said, at all these different technologies. So heat pumps as a whole, we are not looking at white goods, because this is typically in white goods, heat pumps are typically a component, and the manufacturers are not, they don't see their focus in manufacturing the heat pump, but they are manufacturing the bigger envelope, the fridge, the washing machine, the car. What we want to talk to you about today is the European Heat Pump Market and Statistics Report. It's called 2021, but it has numbers for 2020. With this, we are consistent with many other bodies that provide statistics, so don't be confused. The numbers that you will find in this report and that we will talk about today are from 2020. We are having I changed that on a different slide. So we have 21 countries actually covered, not 22, and it's 145 pages of information. There's also an online tool for a dynamic evaluation. It's available under stats.ehpa.org. This report is available to all of our members. We also make it available on request for research and policy purposes. And for everybody else that wants to use the report and the data for commercial activities, then we have it available for sale. You find the information there. But now let's jump into the data. It's a huge amount of data. We are looking back now to data that we have started collecting in 1993. And of course, we have added country and country and country. And now we have quite comparable data for the last 10 years. This is all for these 21 countries that I talked about. And here you can see that over the last 10 years, we have seen a bit of a slow start in 2010, 11, 12, and 13. And after that, it has continued to grow, and the growth has actually accelerated over the past 5 years. Of course, everybody was affected by the corona pandemic, and the heat pump industry is no different, but at least there was no downturn, but the sales numbers have increased. If you look at the red arrow, you see that between 2015 and 2020, we were able to double the annual sales. And this is, of course, very important, because we are still confronted with the fact that heat pumps are not a cheap solution as we speak, and we need economies of scale to bring costs down. But economies of scale apply. I have seen different assessments on this, and there is floating numbers between 20 and 25% that economies of scale should bring down the manufacturing cost. And we expect, with the current growth, if that continues next year and the years after, then we will have a doubling of the stock, which will then result in these savings by 2025-26, and maybe a second one by 2031. So all in all, we expect something like a 35 to 40% reduction of costs over the next 10, let's say 12 years. If you put the whole picture into perspective, 15 million heat pumps installed in a European building stock of 115 to 120 million buildings. So we are somewhere above 10%, 11, 12, 13. It depends a little bit how you put the numbers together, but we can say it's a meaningful technology that is established across the European Union. And here we are also including the UK, Switzerland, and Norway. So it's, let's say it's established across Europe. I want to separate one category of heat pumps here. That's the sanitary hot water heat pumps. They have been a driver for many installers, because if an installer is not so fit for purpose when he, or not so knowledgeable, not so trusting himself in the heat pump technology, then putting a hot water heat pump next to an existing oil or gas boiler will bring about 15 to 20% energy savings immediately. And it will make them acquainted, and also the end user, to a new technology. So this was seen as a good inroad into the market, but we see that it's a bit stagnating and it's not growing as fast anymore as the other solutions, the other technologies. And maybe a guess could be that now people are knowledgeable more, and they're actually using, and they're jumping directly from a fossil solution to a heat pump solution. We will see next year if this is a continued situation, or if it's just also a result of COVID. Then there is a separate piece of information that we are not integrating yet into the overall statistics. That's a collection that we did for 2019 on industrial heat pumps, because it's really difficult to find out how many big heat pumps are we installing. And you will see a mismatch between this slide that I'm showing here and the data that we have been presenting. Don't be confused, they don't integrate. So the number that we show in the report, slightly below 1,000, is different than the number here. We have made a separate survey with the members of our large heat pump group, and you can see that in 2019 we were able to record, and I'm not claiming this is complete, but it's a good representation of the market. We were able to record 17,786 units that were sold, and most of these are sold really as individual projects. So the manufacturers know where they sell them. This is a European market, so it's also difficult to say if this is difficult to collect this data on a national level, because not every manufacturer is represented in all the heat pump associations. And you can see here that the majority of the units were air-to-air units in a smaller capacity range, 50 to 100 kilowatts. I'm sorry if it's not so easy to see. You can look at the presentation afterwards. And you see a second smaller band of let's say higher market penetration between 500 and 750 kilowatt, and this would be where I would expect to be district heating units, and also here in the next one 750 to 900 kilowatt. And we see that that air-to-air is the dominant source, and that it's followed by air-to-water. Geothermal is relevant, mainly in the smaller part here between 100 and 150 kilowatts. So that's a topic that we need to increase our efforts to make it better, because with our data coverage is not sufficient. Let's come back to the main slides again. So the sales of heat pumps by type, I wanted to underline that air is now the dominant energy source. We are seeing it in, I think, more than 90% of all the heat pumps that are sold are using air as energy source. The geothermal and water-to-water units have a stable basis, but in an increasing market, so in absolute terms, the numbers are about the same, but in an increasing market, their share in overall sales is reducing. You see also that we are trying to put hybrid heat pumps on the map. We don't have a lot of good data about that, and you're seeing the thermally driven heat pumps missing completely. That's because we were not able to bring enough contributors to the data collection to make it acceptable from a privacy perspective. And obviously we don't want to show how many units a single manufacturer is doing. Then if we look at overall sales, who are the market leaders in these in Europe, then you see that for a long time France is the undisputed market leader, has reached now 394,000 units, followed by Italy, and number 3 for the first time is Germany. Germany has seen tremendous increase, 37% plus in 2020, We think as a result of both the introduction of a CO2 price and a very, very substantial subsidy scheme that is targeted at renovating buildings. If you replace a fossil boiler, an oil boiler with a heat pump, you receive subsidies of 45%. If you replace a gas boiler, you still receive 35%. So people are attracted by this type of subsidies, and it's triggering demand, as you can see. The top 3 markets here were responsible for nearly 50% of all sales, and the top 10 markets are responsible for 87% of market sales. That's on the one hand, it's a bit of a biased discussion here. On the other hand, it shows very clearly that we have huge potential for more growth, because these smaller countries, or the smaller countries from a heat pump perspective in the lower end of this graph, are still not small countries when it comes to boiler deployment. Especially the Mediterranean countries, I see huge potential for these integrated systems that I mentioned before, the ones that provide heating and use the waste cooling from the provide cooling and use the waste heat from the cooling process for hot water generation, for example. And since they can also be run in reverse mode, you have only one investment. So the cost situation, if you need heating and cooling and you can provide both solutions with an integrated device, is actually improving. Did I say? Yeah, 1.6 million units sold. We said that already. Then if we look at the split by country and energy source, you can see, and we don't need to look into the details, but you see here the brown bars are geothermal units, and you see a geographical distribution that is probably mainly justified by the starting point. Colder countries, perceived at least, with longer winters, Austria, Switzerland, but also Germany, see a lot of geothermal deployment. Then the biggest bar here is the Netherlands, where drilling is easier than in other countries. So the cost situation, the cost disadvantage of drilling a geothermal source is less prevailing. But then also you see Sweden with colder winter and colder climate being significantly active here. And then you see the dark blue bars. These are the ones that are hydronic systems, air to water, and this is a tradition. It's a simple tradition. If in your country heating is done by hydronic distribution, then this is the prevailing solution. If air is the main distribution medium, then it's an air-to-air unit. I'm sorry, I think I mixed this up. It's air to water is light blue and air to air is dark blue. We have to change that. That was different in the past. Then if I look at split by country and size, then we also see that the majority of all heat pumps, this is dark blue, light blue, and green, is below 20 kilowatts. And in most countries, this is the majority of the market. And the other ones are just coming now, but there may also be a bit of lack of precision here, because many of these larger heat pumps, if they are deployed in commercial buildings, they are often deployed as air conditioning units and not as heat pumps. So we have a naming problem that makes collecting statistics a bit more difficult, especially for these multivalent units that provide heating and cooling at the same time. If we look at the overall benefits, then I mentioned already the benefits conceptually. If here we show that 14.8 million heat pumps provide about 120 gigawatts of capacity, provide 250 terawatt hours of useful energy, and mind you that we are talking about the demand for heat of 2,500 terawatt hours. So we're providing about these similar 10% of useful energy. 159 terawatt hours of this is renewable. 203 terawatt hours is savings when it comes to final energy use. This is a different calculation method I could explain in detail. And then there's CO2 savings of 40.6 megatons. And most importantly now, for this demand side flexibility, a potential of 3.4 terawatt hours of potential. The heat pumps are manufactured across Europe. We have recently counted again 165 manufacturing sites. It's mainly SME based. It's often located in rural areas. That means this technology provides perspective and employment and tax income also to municipalities that are at the end of the highway. It's often quite difficult to visit heat pump manufacturers because they're typically not central. The industry generates a turnover of 8.2 million euros and also provides employment. Nearly 90,000 full-term equivalents are necessary to manufacture, install, and maintain the heat pumps and its components. Then the market share, where do we stand? When we look at overall heater sales, you see that this is also a bit fluctuating, but we are seeing heater sales around 7 million units and 1.4 million. This is heating heat pumps, so we have excluded the hot water heat pumps. Of these are heat pumps, and that gives us a market share of around 20% in annual sales, and that has been increasing. So again, also here you can see that now there's an increasing difference between the fossil boiler sales and heat pumps, and we hope that this gap is increasing even further in the future. And if it continues like this, then maybe we will have a heat pump share of 50% in annual sales by 2035 or earlier. Where is the potential? I mean, is that even realistic, you may ask? And here I can say that if we compare heat pumps sold per 1,000 households, then the biggest countries are the smaller countries by population, but nonetheless, they have a huge penetration: Norway, Finland, Estonia, Denmark, Sweden, and Lithuania. So you could say the top 5 are countries in difficult climate zones. And what I would say as a message here is, if heat pumps work there, they can work everywhere. And that gives us a huge potential for additional growth in the future. Of course, there are some other guiding functions. And is that necessary? Yes, it is. I will just show one slide that Josephine will pick up on later. This is the EU Energy Systems Integration Strategy that is very optimistic and also very much expecting from the heat pump industry to deliver when it comes to reaching Europe's energy and climate target. And in short, 40% of all residential buildings, 65% of all commercial buildings are supposed to be heated efficiently with electric heat pumps in 2030. We're not discussing industry yet, but that means, based on today's stock, a factor of 4. Here I have just drawn with my own hands a nice S-curve, and you can see that we are at the bottom, at the tipping point of an S-curve. So expect the heat pump markets to grow fast. But of course, we have a number of requirements, and I would say heat pump industry can deliver, but do we have the value chain ready? And I think Niels will come in on that point. So I want to say we are aware of that. Is the technology advanced enough? Are heat pumps easy to install so that installers like to install them? Do we have enough planners? And maybe having the planners is even more important than having the installers. Do we have enough financing secured? What about low-income houses and social housing? And of course, is the traditional value chain the value chain of the future? What about new players? I just want to show this graph because I really like it a lot. I think it's a great idea to think from an electric house with photovoltaic on the roof, with a heat pump in the basement or wherever for heating and cooling, with a battery and an electric car outside the door, and all of this integrated with a controls unit. So that would conclude my introduction of the market, and I would like to hand over to Josephine, who will talk to us about the market framework and the legislation. So my question here, we can deliver from a technology perspective, but do we have the right framework to trigger sufficient demand to justify an increase of production? Thank you very much so far. And Josephine, I hand over to you.
Thank you.
1 second, please. I'm sorry. Thomas, can you please check the chat box? I
will go into the chat box, but since I was not too conscious of time, let me just answer these things by writing while Josephine presents.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, but it's not presentation mode yet, but it's still the preparation mode.
Okay. Still not? No? Okay. Strange. On my screen, it's presentation mode. Wait. Okay.
And you're sharing your speaker notes with us while the presentation mode is on your other screen, maybe.
Okay, I will re-share. Now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes? Okay. Okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay, very good. So good morning, everyone. And yeah, I'm Josephine van Weeselaar, Head of EU Affairs at EHPA. After Thomas has presented to you the current state of the heat pump market, we will have now a look at the policy developments and how these can affect actually the future market development. On this slide, you see an overview of the current legislation in place that is covering heat pumps. I'm not going to go through all the details, but the ones in green are the Clean Energy for All Europeans package. And you see a wide range of different legislations that really recognize heat pumps and that will be very beneficial for heat pumps when they are all implemented at the national level. This is not the case for everything yet. For example, the electricity market design, the flexible tariffs, we know that this is not yet implemented by all member states. Below that, we see more complex, more technical legislation, so the F-gas regulation and eco-design regulations, and they actually guide the sector towards improvements, for example, on F-gas, to reduce the emissions from refrigerants and heat pumps, and this is working well. And eco-design is guiding the sector towards more and more efficient products. So this is what is currently in place. But we know that this is not enough. At least also the Commission knows this, and they want to be much more ambitious, and they have set this new target of minus 55 CO2 emissions by 2030 to go towards a carbon neutral continent by 2050. And in this framework, these current legislations will be revised. So we will notice probably that in 2 weeks, there's the Fit for 55 package that the Commission will publish and that actually revises these legislations that I have just shown to you. So if we look into this Green Deal and climate law, it's not only this Fit for 55 package that is coming up, but there has already been some publications and communications. First of all, this EU strategy for energy system integration, which Thomas also highlighted. And we also had the renovation wave communication. And in all of these, heat pumps are a very important aspect. So again, the slide that Thomas has highlighted before, in the energy system integration strategy, we see that there's very clear targets. So the target is to have 65% of all commercial buildings heated electrically by 2030 and 40% of all residential buildings heated electrically by 2030. And if we think about heating electrically, we need to apply the energy efficiency first principle. This is key throughout all energy legislation. So then it's very logical that this is mostly done with heat pumps. And if we look at the current amount of buildings, the current amount of heat pumps, then this would end up in a quadrupling of the current heat pump stock by 2030. So meaning 42 to 52 million heat pumps by 2030. If we look then at the renovation wave communication, there also, heat pumps and decarbonizing heating and cooling is a very important aspect. And as a target, this communication puts that it wants to renovate the 35 million least performing buildings by 2030. And this is very important for our sector because this means actually that all these buildings will be immediate heat pump candidates. So this is also a very important target. So as said also before, so this quadrupling of heat pumps, we know from our members, the industry can deliver. We will also hear it from the next speaker today. So the industry is ready for this, but we really need the right framework conditions that trigger the end user demand. So it's not enough to just produce more and to have these heat pumps in your stock. You also need to install them and there needs to be demand. This demand triggering, we really see or hope, and it should be the role of the Fit for 55 package to trigger this end use demand for heat pumps. In our recommendations, we have grouped them into 4 groups. The 2 first are more on regulation. So the first one is on aligning policies. A second one on really unlocking the full potential. A third group of recommendations is really on supporting citizens. And then a fourth group is on pricing. So if we look at the first group of recommendations, it's about aligning policies on efficient and renewable heating and cooling. And what do we mean by that? Well, currently we see that heating and cooling policy is really scattered. So you have the comprehensive assessments on heating and cooling in the Energy Efficiency Directive, the renewable assessments and heating and cooling in the Renewable Energy Directive, then the long-term renovation strategies, the NECPs. So these are all requirements for member states that are scattered throughout different legislations. And these are not aligned. First of all, they are not aligned on timing. We see that the assessments need to be done by December 2020, and then the strategies already had to be done by April 2020, or the plans by December 2019. So we really need to be consistent in assessing before planning. And for member states, it needs to be clear what should be done by when and how this is all linked to each other. And for that, we really think that a heating decarbonization roadmap, putting this all into perspective, clearly linking everything is really necessary, because if it's not clear for a member state, how can it then also be clear for a citizen or for anyone in this member states what they should do by when? So also linked to that is that in some legislations, only the renewable aspect is considered, in others, only the efficiency aspect. But we know a heat pump is beneficial to both the energy efficiency targets and the renewable energy targets. So these technologies that contribute to multiple targets should be incentivized more, and this should also be highlighted. If we look at the second group of recommendations, this is about unlocking the full potential of heat pump technologies. And a first concrete ask there is that we really need a binding renewables in heating and cooling target. Because if we look at the past, in the first Renewable Energy Directive, so this graph is from the shares, the statistics from the Commission. And the green bullets with the white line, it represents renewables in heating and cooling shares. And at the time of the first Renewable Energy Directive in 2009, you had about 15.31 share of renewables in heating and cooling. And at the time of the second Renewable Energy Directive in 2017, this was about 19.49%. So between those two, there was only an increase of 4.2 percentage points. And especially when you know that in the second one, there is this indicative target of an annual increase of 1.3%. We see that this is not being followed, and this is not enough because it has been consistently below 1 percentage point per year annual increase. So we really need a binding target to push member states to really, go for this, because an indicative target, we see the result, it is not being followed. A second one that was also already highlighted a bit by Thomas is that we should incentivize circular energy use. What do we mean by that? Well, as said, a heat pump has the unique feature that it can actually implement energy efficiency first principle by recovering waste heat or by reusing waste heat. And when you recover waste heat, this waste heat is no longer waste, but it's used again in a circular way. So a heat pump is really a tool that implements the circular energy principle. And currently, waste heat recovery is only recognized, can only be counted towards the renewable heating and cooling targets when it is unavoidable and when it is captured by a district heating and cooling system. But this word unavoidable, it's not really defined how this should be done. So what is unavoidable? And we think that this can be incentivized stronger by really requesting that every time that you have waste heat, that it's looked at whether this can be reused on site or nearby, to heat other processes or buildings. So in this map here, you see excess heat activities in industry sectors all over Europe. So you see that there is a huge untapped market potential for industrial waste heat recovery. But that's not only the case in industry. We also see that even in commercial and the residential sector, there is a huge untapped potential. Here you see a picture of a logistic building of a supermarket, where typically on the roof you have these units that dissipate waste heat. Well, in these cases, it should be looked at whether this can be reused to heat, for example, the building next to it, or in the area. So this is another concrete measure. Then our third group of measures is really to guide citizens very concretely to efficient and renewable heating and cooling solutions for their buildings. And a measure there is the implementation of one-stop shops. I think by now this is very shared among many stakeholders that this is a bit of a no-brainer, that the one-stop shops really work well and they should be implemented widely. We have been, or we are still, as EHPA, involved in the Super Homes project, which is an Irish project where one-stop shops are used to help people renovate their buildings with heat pumps, but not only heat pumps, much more, as you can see on the picture. And it works very well. And you can also read from the testimonies that the people are very happy with this scheme because it really guides them from the start to the end. It helps them with the paperwork, it helps them with finding the right grants and so on. So this is really something on the ground that really works to help people renovate and take the right decisions for their heating and cooling system. Another concrete measure is the minimum share of renewable energy in buildings, where we propose to have at least a minimum share of renewable heat as part of this share. So now it's mainly discussed, the discussion is mainly around implementing this minimum share of renewable energy. And for this graph is from Flanders, where this is already required since 2014, that a minimum share of renewable energy is done in new builds and major renovations. And we see that to meet these requirements, 68% has done this by only having PV on their roof. Then around 21% has implemented PV plus a heat pump, but only 3% has only chosen for a heat pump. So we see that the majority chooses to have PV, nothing against PV, of course, but this is only one part of the solution. We need to decarbonize not only the power supply, but also the heating. So therefore, we really propose to look at this minimum share of renewable energy in both power and heating. So people are triggered to look at both aspects. And then the last part of the recommendations is on pricing. Pricing really needs to be reviewed to guide end users towards the most energy efficient and renewable solutions. So as also mentioned already by Thomas, heat pump technologies are today the best in class on energy efficiency, on renewables and on air quality, but also on this very important demand response potential. But on costs, they are still they are still more expensive than fossil boiler technologies. And to reverse this, or at least to rebalance this carbon pricing is needed to make the best technology also, again, the most affordable one. And of course, here we cannot forget that, yes, we cannot put the burden on the poorer households. We really need to use these revenues from carbon pricing to support these households, for example, through these one-stop shops, through subsidies and so on. And an area where this is again very clear, this pricing problem, is the taxation. So we see here that the levies and taxes placed on gas, so in red, are in all countries except for the Netherlands much lower than the taxes and levies placed on electricity. So the burden of the energy transition is almost entirely put on electricity consumers, which is contradictory because electricity is getting greener by the day. So it's really, this should really be tackled also by adapting the energy taxation directive. Okay, so if we look now at the way forward, we have this adjustment of production where we know that the industry is ready, where we can quadruple by 2030. But we really need to activate this end user demand where we really see the Fit for 55 package as a huge opportunity to do this by using regulation, by using support, and by using pricing. And then in the end, we will have the decarbonized building stock. And this again is then again an industrialization opportunity for many sectors, but for sure also for the heat pump sector. So these 165 manufacturing sites in Europe, will then stay in Europe and can even grow. More jobs will be created and so on. So this is really an industrialization opportunity for the sector. And then here it's actually to complete the picture from the beginning with the upcoming legislations from the Fit for 55 package. I've put here the pluses already on the right, but of course we do not know the details yet, but let's hope they are ambitious. So that we can reach the targets of quadrupling heat pumps by 2030. And if this is the case, we really have a heat pump decade ahead of us, and we can reach this quadrupling and continue this growth. One last remark or one last criticism that we often get is that, but if there's so many heat pumps added, if there's 50 million heat pumps in 2030, the lights will not stay on because the electricity grid cannot cope with this. Well, this is not true. We have actually gathered quite a large number of utilities and system operators that really say that the grid is ready for this and can support this. And they have all drafted a statement together that will be launched on Monday, also in a seminar similar to this one. So we invite you all to also attend that seminar, because that's a very important aspect that cannot be overlooked. Thank you all. Voilà.
Super, thank you very much, Josephine. That was tour de force. It's really a very complex matter, and I hope you can take home that heat pumps are a highly regulated technology. I want to stress again what Josephine said last, this idea that the electric grids will falter if more heat pumps are deployed. We see it now that it's exactly the opposite. The electric grids will benefit from having more heat pumps, and of course heat pumps will benefit from more stable electric grids. We also see that electric transport is probably more interesting and more attractive than heating. You would rather show your neighbors your new car than your new heat pump. Unfortunately, I really have to say, but that's the situation. And so the stress from electric mobility is on the grids is probably higher, and here the heat pumps can help. And as Josephine said, Monday afternoon we will explain that with the support of some major utilities and also EDSO, the European Distribution Grid Operators Association, and a few DSOs themselves. They all say this is not a problem if we know early enough. Upgrading the electric grids, which are available anyways, to a standard that can accommodate for electric mobility and heat pumps is absolutely in range of our capacity, both technically and financially. But okay, you can look at that, look at our website, register for that. It's going to be very interesting. And I have heard already that many people like that this is now putting down in writing so that we can go to the next level and continue the development. We have now Hervé Pierret from Daikin Europe. Hervé, please, your comments, your insights, your reflections on what you have heard so far. Are we ready as industry to manufacture? Do we have a value chain that is fit for purpose? What's your opinion? Of course, you're one manufacturer, but you're quite a representative one. And I should stress, Daikin, despite the rather foreign sounding name, is a company that has a strong foothold inside Europe. Its global R&D center for heat pumps is in Europe. Manufacturing sites are in Europe. So this is showing a little bit how this global value chain unfolds, with Europe as quite a powerhouse, at least for the moment. And that's why we think it's also very important to support heat pumps further so that this industry stays where it is on the continent. Hervé, please.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm sharing my screen. I hope you can see it.
Visible now.
Yes, okay. Yes, indeed. Thank you for the introduction, Thomas. So I'll take you through a couple of viewpoints from our side, very much going over the fact of how heat pumps can drive decarbonization. It is a proven solution today. Heat pumps are an opportunity, and as an industry and as an industry player, we are getting ready for this. I'm telling you nothing new. Europe wants to become climate neutral by 2050. There is serious investment plans from the European Commission. We believe decarbonizing the heating sector will be a key factor, and heat pumps, and especially hydronic heat pumps, will play a key role in this. Europe aims, and it was already also mentioned by Josephine, Europe aims to have a high percentage of penetration of renewables in heating and cooling by 2030. Again, we believe that the heat pumps can contribute significantly to that. What we're looking towards in the building industry is a massive potential and a massive challenge, which will lead to what we believe a transformation of the building sector. We have over 1/3 of CO2 emissions are accountable by the building stock. Half of the energy use, energy consumption is generated by heating and cooling in buildings, and of 80% of that going into buildings. And if we look at the building stock that we count almost like 200 million of energy inefficient buildings. About 200 million of those buildings have been built before the year 2000. So again, not the best in energy efficiency. And about 30 million of those houses are still heated with heavily polluting fossil fuels. So a massive potential and a massive challenge for us. Heat pumps, for us, they can decarbonize in 3 ways. We have, first of all, renewable energy factor. Heat pumps are clearly taking the energy from renewable sources and translating that into different heat pump types. Obviously, they are the air-to-air heat pumps, which were already addressed in the statistics by Thomas. And then what is important is that there are a number of hydronic-based heat pumps, air-to-water, ground-to-water, or hybrid heat pumps, which are perfectly fit to meet the requirements in most of the European houses, European buildings, because we know that the vast majority are using water-based heating systems. So there, we believe that hydronic heat pumps can play a key role and will play a key role in that. Heat pumps are a low carbon technology. It's thanks to the renewable aspect of the energy. It is abundantly available in Europe. And what is a key element there where we can contribute is that today we can see that the EU's energy dependency rate has been gradually increasing since 2000. So using heat pumps is a way to change that. Renewable energy doesn't need to be imported. So there we get away from the standard approach, let's say, that we've known so far. And a third element is that the heat pump is an energy saving technology, because we see that the carbon impact of a heat pump is about half of that one of a high efficiency gas boiler. So that means that it is proven basically that the heat pump can contribute to decarbonizing the heating sector. And how do heat pumps do that? Well, by now we can surely say that heat pumps are a proven solution from small residential over large commercial into industrial applications. As Thomas already said, a lot of heat pumps have very high penetration in the Nordic countries. And indeed, that's what we also see. Heat pumps are applicable everywhere from north to south, east to west, with operation ranges down to -28 degrees. If we look now a bit more closer into the residential sector, there we see applications in single family houses where we believe that by 2030, basically heat pumps will become standard, the standard heating application. We see already today in the Netherlands, for instance, that there in a couple of years, the new build sector has moved to heat pumps entirely. An important opportunity there are multifamily houses. There we have two types of approaches. We have the decentralized heating apartment buildings, where we believe that where people put an individual heat pump per apartment, that potentially by 2030, we could see 1 out of 5 new built apartment buildings for sure having such type of heat pumps, maybe higher, depending on the offers that we as an industry can further develop. But also important is the segment of apartment buildings that use centralized heating. And there we see obviously an opportunity for different types of heat pumps, potentially in combination with district heating, and that can play a key role in there. So also next to individual houses, also apartment buildings will be apt more and more to use heat pumps. And then potentially the largest challenge to turn into an opportunity is the replacement segment, where there we are looking at massive standard fossil fuel heating systems to be potentially turned into renewable heating. There again, it was already mentioned before, the objective to increase, to double the replacement rate will be a driver to move to more efficient heating, where we potentially could see 1 out of 4 heat systems being a heat pump by 2030. And to put that in practice, I would like to show you a simulation model that we've made, taking the current situation of about 7 to 8 million heating systems to be sold per year in Europe. What is key in this heating market is that we already see the new build market, where although maybe we would expect a small reduction of the new build housing intensity, but that's clearly small, the heat pumps as such will become standard by 2030. And then the remaining part of our heating systems that we know go to the replacement market. And if we put in practice the saying that, or the assumption that there will be a doubling of the replacement rate, it will actually result in an increase of the total heating market, because more people will replace their old inefficient system with a more efficient one. This could mean that in some countries where still coal heating is very common, or people that have non-condensing boilers, a part of them will move probably to condensing boilers, improving some level of energy efficiency, but not entirely. But obviously, the share of heat pumps will grow significantly, double, triple, potentially. Now, the question that we need to ask ourselves in this simulation is, with this view, do we then meet, as an industry, the EU decarb targets? Can the rest of, let's say, the gray area that you see, will those be gas boilers that include a 20% blending mix with hydrogen? Will there be 100% hydrogen-ready boilers? And by when will they be applicable or widely installed? Question mark. And moreover, what can we do with heat pumps to increase that share? Will it be full electric heat pumps, or will there be a significant part of hybrid heat pumps finding their way in the market? That's a question that we are still asking ourselves, and that we are gradually, as Daikin or as an industry, trying to find the right response to. But surely what we see here is a tremendous positive outlook for the heating sector and especially the heat pump sector. Now, what are we doing as an industry? As an industry, I believe what is important to know is that basically the European hydronic heat pump sector is not only having a firm base in Europe, but is also basically, if you look at it on the worldwide basis, we are developing the heat pumps with the highest standards, which then gradually, and we see that within our network as well, we get more and more questions, demands from overseas to look at our heat pumps and to potentially implement them overseas. It's clear that there's a potential for heat pumps to boost economic growth, to further increase the employment. So we are creating jobs, we're generating positive contribution to the economy. Specifically at Daikin, what we are doing is to really focus on development of the right heat pumps for Europe. That's why we have decided that we are investing in a new development center here in Belgium, employing over 200 people, where we really look into detail on how to develop the right heat pump for the right markets, taking into account the different climate zones that Europe is having, taking into account the different customer expectations and user expectations, whether it's from design point of view, whether it's concerns about sound, etc. And also, very important, is taking into consideration the expectations that our installers have. Over the years, if we look back at the heat pumps that we sold 10 years ago and the ones that we have today, have gone through a massive change by taking into account elements that make the installation of a heat pump more easy for the installer, whereby already it's now common to have remote commissioning of heat pumps. On the other hand, what we're also looking for is that not only to be able to remotely monitor heat pumps, but to a certain extent to see where we can also remotely repair heat pumps. This to, again, help and support the installer and make his life easier or more enjoyable in installing and maintaining heat pumps. That's what the aspect of the development is. Secondly, when we look at the production side, in Europe, we are already in Europe since over 45 years, almost 50 years. And amongst all our heat pump factories that we have in Europe, we today have 5 factories dedicated to heat pump production. And we have most recently also in our factory in Germany, we have increased some production lines to meet the increasing demand and continuously reevaluate our production capacity in view of the increasing demand and the simulation, as I showed you earlier. And what we see furthermore is that the growth that we see for heat pumps is not only us thinking that it will grow, but we do see and we do feel an increasing customer interest. Same thing we see from government side, where we have clear government support for renewables today in terms of incentives. And some of the most clear examples I could mention are the ones in France, but definitely also the super ecobonus in Italy. Going from there to saying that we are ready to decarbonize heat, we believe that there are 4 key steps to take, and that's the ones that we've already widely communicated. Is first of all, we need to make sure that our new build rules are continuously being strengthened, so that the only logical solution to avoid carbonized heating in new build is to make sure that all new build goes with heat pumps. And we believe that by 2030 is a very realistic target to reach throughout Europe. The second element is the replacement rate, where there we see that, or we request the member states to really push for measures to push people to put a more efficient heating system in their house, ideally a heat pump. The third one, and that's a very important one, is that we currently still see that basically fossil fuels are incentivized, either still with some subsidies in the replacement market, but also, and it was already touched by Josephine, with a very different tax level that we see for electricity versus gas. And there we really request governments to act and to generate an even level playing field for both electricity and gas driven systems. And the fourth key step is then push to have governments to push people towards renewable heating and to make, in an ideal way, renewable heating a standard in replacement, so that indeed we are able as a sector to decarbonize heat and help Europe become a carbon-free continent by 2050. On this note, I would like to close and open to your comments and questions.
Thank you very much, also Hervé. I think that supplemented quite well the statements that Josephine and myself have made already. There was one question here directly to you. I'm not sure if that is already answered, but it was where do you put the water-to-water heat pumps in your considerations?
Basically, we have in this case we have made our simulation the total hydronic heat pumps, including the water-to-water. Yes.
Okay.
So those are included in our simulation.
I wrote that already, that it's included in the ground source heat pumps. We used to have a distinction, and the European directives actually distinguish between air source, aerothermal, water source, water or hydrothermal, and ground source geothermal heat pumps. But now it's going to be included into the overarching term ambient energy. And that's the future that we should use to make it easy to understand. Yeah, so we have a number of questions. I would leave them for a final discussion because they're not for clarification. Niels, you have heard all this. May I disclose that you're looking for a heat pump yourself? So not only would I like to see your commission perspective, but I know that you are very concerned with the value chain. So I want to give you the opportunity to also express that.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for the invitation to be here and for the interesting presentations here. I think it's good news that sales increased last year despite the crisis. Of course, you can discuss whether it's too much, let's say enough, and I don't think it is. Josephine mentioned all the policy regulatory aspects. This is, of course, something the Commission is working on, and there will be news on that front just 2 weeks from now in the Fit for 55, where I think you will recognize and be able to check at least some of the boxes you highlighted here, the demands. We are trying in the various instruments to promote the green energy transition, and it's very clear that electrification of space and water heating is a sine qua non for the green transition and the climate neutrality. In all the realistic scenarios we operate with, we see a very sharp growth in electrification. And space and water heating is really one of the applications it's not so hard to decarbonize, technologically at least. So there is an immense role, and you could discuss the figures, but I think my key message here today is that you don't think big enough as industry. The heat pump industry doesn't think big enough. If you want to be big, you need to think You need to act as big ones or act as somebody who wants to be big. And I don't think you're doing that. I also think the industry as a whole is not ready to deliver. The heat pump industry is not as a sector ready to deliver. Yes, the technology is there, and European manufacturers not least have excellent products, as was mentioned before. But you can't buy them. You're putting in a personal anecdote. I've contacted at least 3 or 4 European manufacturers with very nice, attractive products, either low, natural refrigerant cycles or otherwise very nice. They were not able to point to the installer in the country I live. When some of them, when I finally found one, he eventually said, "No, I can't. Sorry, I can't. I'm not. I haven't done it before. I don't want to do it." The first price was 29,000 euros for a very simple, rather simple project. So the industry is not ready to deliver. I'm sorry, and we would like to help you get ready to deliver because we need you. But a key part of delivering is a key part of the value chain is the elephant in the room, and it hasn't really been discussed today, is the installers, marketing, sales, and installers. And you simply can't go on the way you're doing right now. It won't work. It'll go as slowly as the graph suggests, and it won't be quick enough. So we need disruption. We need market transformation. We need new players in the field. I know that there are utilities on the call today. I hope that some of them are looking into this. In the country I know best, I know that the government has had success with one of the subsidy schemes where they, instead of giving households the subsidies, they granted them to companies that set up heat pump on subscription services. And so this attracted new players. It attracted an oil company who's now traditionally selling oil for oil boilers, is now selling heat pumps as services. This is the kind of innovation we need. And please don't wait for the EU regulations or subsidies, national subsidies to solve this. This will not work just by subsidies and regulation. This is not how industry grows big. We really need innovative and innovation thinking in the industry itself about how the products are sold. If you say the demand is not there, I think it's maybe because you don't see it. When you don't hear all the customers that ask the technicians and the chauffagistes and whatever, could I get a heat pump? And they say, no, you better boil, or they're more comfortable with installing a gas boiler, and they do that. You never hear about that demand. Even when you hear about that demand, you don't deliver. I've myself, via the official websites, asked quotes from some of the biggest manufacturers in Europe. I got a visit 10 weeks after, I have no quote. I mean, it's not working. Your distribution is not working. Sorry to say that. That's at least my personal, but I have never spoken to anybody with having tried without having similar experiences. I think it works better in some member states than others. And to be fair, the graphs Thomas showed in the first part of the session, in Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, France, it's not as bad, the story. But if we want to do this mainstream and really exploit the potential, the value chain, the manufacturers in Europe needs to more focus on marketing, sales, and installation, and how to disrupt this, and perhaps also take responsibility for educating more installers. There's such a shortage. I think I've at least 5 installers that just said, I don't have time. Sorry, I have too much to do. And we were not even discussing price. So please just don't rely on governments or the EU or subsidies to solve this for you. Please seize the opportunity. You have the magnificent situation that you're working on something where everybody can see the potential. It's huge. It's a fantastic business opportunity, but the industry needs to think about how its products are sold and placed in the homes of Europeans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niels. You know that I like these type of controversial discussions, because if we all pat ourselves on our shoulders, then we will not advance. Let me summarize what you said in a maybe more positive manner, even though I can feel your personal your personal disappointment about the situation. What we have said repeatedly is, if you look at the graphs that I have shown, we are moving into a situation where the people that are willing to pay more and that are willing to endure this burden that you are encountering are getting less and less. And this S-curve, it's not by accident that we need to do something that allows for fast uptake. And I would say that people that are cost conscious and that are making a cost conscious decision in favor of their heating system, or a cost conscious selection of their heating system, they are not the ones that are mainly building heat pumps today, but they are the ones that must build heat pumps if we want to achieve the targets that you have shown, and if we want to achieve the trajectories also that Hervé has mentioned. So from that perspective, I do actually expect something from the Commission, because there is a good principle that's called polluter pays. And at the moment, heat pumps are fully covered by ETS, because we use electricity that is fully covered by ETS, unless you have a thermally driven heat pump, or thermally driven heat pump, then it's not. But the incumbents that had 50, 100 years of development time, so that at the end of their development cycles and have harvested all economies of scale, on top of that, they're quite often getting subsidies. And on top of that, they're not paying a CO2 price. And so from this angle, I'm very happy to look at Germany, but also other countries will now follow suit, where they said, okay, we will introduce a CO2 price that will make your operating costs every year more expensive. And then the question is, how high can that value become? But it's now 25 euros. It's kept at 65 at the moment. Many people say that the pollution cost of CO2 is much higher, more in the dimension of 180, 200 euros. If that was the case, we wouldn't even be discussing the price anymore, because then the heat pump would be the cheapest solution. But so from our perspective, it's really important that this market situation is solved. And since this market situation is made by policymakers, it must be solved by policymakers. And then we will do the rest. I take it fully on board, and I will confront also our members again with your statements to say, what are we doing about the value chain? Personally, I believe if the economic situation is better, it will automatically attract more players. But I want to give Hervé the words to that. So what's your experience? You are responsible, in quotes, for this value chain. Do you see the demand, or do you have this unknown demand that never arrives at your doorstep?
I would indeed a bit contradict the fact that we don't see the demand. We do see it, we do feel it, and believe me that we are on that side working hard to try to meet the demand. On the one hand, being able to supply, that is one element, and that is today, that is working. And secondly, I think I need to agree with Niels, where we see a difference in approaches and development of the installer capability or installer network in markets. You've mentioned some markets, they are able to cope a bit better, where I think, and you mentioned Sweden, you mentioned France, which today have already, let's say, a longer tradition of installing heat pumps. I would guess if we go back 10 years ago, when we also had already a very high level of heat pump installation, air-to-water heat pump installation in France. I think at that time there were also some hiccups in getting enough installers doing the installations in a correct way. And that is where I think we need to, as an industry, and for us as an installer as well, we need to work in those markets where the heat pump is not let's call it a mainstream technology. If we can say that France there, it's already a part of a mainstream heating solution. That there we need to very much work on the training and enrollment of new installers. That's for us. That's also for our colleagues in the industry. Yeah? But I want to emphasize the fact that there are two elements that goes with it, and they play together. Is what I said earlier on the product development. Is where we have and we are investing very much in trying to make the installation of the technical aspect of the installation easier for the installer, whether it's the current one or a new one to come, but also in that way to be able to lower the barrier for non-heat pump installers to be able to train them quicker, faster, and for them have an easier pickup of the technology on installing and maintaining the heat pumps. So those are two elements that we are working on, and those two go hand in hand together.
Maybe if I can add something also to this discussion. I actually had also, I'm myself renovating a house with a heat pump, and I had a similar experience as Niels, I have to admit. But here the argument of the installers was not, I have no time or I cannot do it, but it was, you're stupid, it's too costly. So it's again also what Thomas has mentioned. It's like, why would you install a heat pump? It's super expensive. You will never earn it back. Electricity prices are too high. Don't do it. So this was really the challenge for us to find someone who was as enthusiastic as us, who are not maybe the average consumer, to have the heat pump installed. So I also think that really, if we address this cost aspect, we will also address this willingness of installers to go for a heat pump.
And I think indeed it's the combination of all the different factors that we need to make sure that they fit together, and the one and the other realizing each of those steps will make it possible for a gradual and a good uptake of the heat pumps throughout the European Union. And the specific cases in the countries related to the installer networks, we definitely need to look at it not case by case, but member state by member state.
Yeah. Niels, do you want to come in once more on this topic? Do we convince you?
Well, unfortunately, I had an unstable internet connection just now, so I missed most of the comments. But I think I fully agree that the pricing, certainly in some member states, is an issue, and the Commission will propose something on this. I think it's widely known. So I think that will go some way towards addressing this, and I agree there is an interplay between these things. But I don't think the industry should be under the illusion that just because we get some more pricing, suddenly everything will be just nice and dandy. I mean, as I see it, your value chain is not ready to deliver, and there is a feedback there because politicians at EU and national level will hesitate to put all their money on your industry. As long as the products are expensive, as long as the consumer journey, his stories are too many about how difficult and cumbersome it is, they will not. Nobody can credibly claim that this is then the mainstream solution. So, I'm thinking about a story. I once spoke to a very wise and very respected and experienced guy from the offshore wind industry, who a few years ago, I guess it's 10 years ago, I had a talk with, and he said very clearly, there was a lot of discussion about state aid guidelines for wind energy at that stage. And he said clearly, our strategy is not to depend on getting subsidies. We want to be independent. We want to scale up. At the time, every single wind turbine was produced sur mesure, to order. And he had a very clear vision of scaling up and become independent of subsidies, as the industry has effectively become now, more or less. One of the other anecdotes I had was an installer who proudly presented that the European brand he sold as heat pumps, they were only producing that particular heat pump once they had my order on measure and also specific. I was not impressed by knowing that, because it needs to be exactly the other way around. This needs to come out as croissants from the bakery in the morning. That's how you get, or fridges, you know, you really need to change mentality. And I think you have a fantastic case. You know, if I could, I would invest in heat pump sector now, because I think there's such a compelling growth story behind it. But I think you need to partner up, think new, and partner up as well. As I said before, I think there are representatives from the gas industry as well here. Why not scale up by offering hybrid solutions in the coming years? You know, that's a way to get installers familiar with heat pumps as well, and phase out gradually some of the gas consumption, getting some of the benefits without having some of the, let's say, all the costs and inopportunities. So I think there are really innovative partnerships here that could be entered into with the industry, but it really needs the industry itself to seek those partnerships and change things.
I think we take this on board. That's really understood. It's understood that there has to be a change. We have to have a control of the value chain. And we hope that the economic conditions will make it easier and more attractive for people. If CO2 price is applied, there is a shift of interest towards more cleaner solutions, and that needs to happen. We have a few questions here that I want to ignore. The typical and one of the top questions is, what about these refrigerants? I will summarize a few of the statements that we have. So what about low GWP refrigerants? That's clear. What about propane? That should be used more. Isobutane, so I'll not bore you with chemical shortcuts. So what about these natural refrigerants? What about CO2? What about the danger of that? I can say we as an association, we are fully supportive of the F-gas regulation. We have invested significant amounts of money into the development of new refrigerant cycles based on the said refrigerants. Some companies have a very specific strategy themselves, so I don't want to go into detail on that one, but I can tell everybody that there is a move away from high GWP refrigerants that's happening very, very fast. And we want to stress, however, that if we have to have the comparison between the refrigerant and a non-refrigerant solution, which is typically a fossil boiler, then the heat pump, independent of which refrigerant you use, is always the better choice. So it needs to be clear that the focus, having said that, we are fully supportive of this phase down, or maybe even eventual phase out, or very, very close to that, whatever that's going to be. But this reduction of emissions has to be inside the change speed that is possible in order not to lose opportunities for heat pump installations. And if that is done, then eventually this can be done by focusing on the building itself and not on the refrigerant. The refrigerant is not the culprit, but the CO2 emissions is the culprit that we want to get away with and that we want to reduce. Maybe I don't know if you want to make a statement on that one, but please keep it general, because I know about the difficulties of this debate.
It's indeed a topic that we address within the company. And as we have a wide array of different solutions, basically as Daikin, we are looking at the different refrigerants, trying to find out and to apply a refrigerant that we judge to be the best for a specific solution. Yeah. Whether it's then is that for residential heating or for commercial cooling or for chillers or whatever, that's a bit our policy. So it's not that we have like, okay, let's go for that one or let's go for that one, but taking into account what the GWP performance is of a refrigerant, and the performance, the efficiency of that refrigerant and the total product. So that's a bit our general answer. But I think that's we can go in a lot in detail on that.
Yeah, we would have to make a separate separate event on this one, because it's really getting technical. And what we have learned over the past 5 years is also there is a bit of a hen and the egg. When the industry thought that the component manufacturers would actually provide components that could run on low GWP refrigerants, and then the component manufacturers said, but you didn't ask for this. So it's something that I think is now more attuned, and the cogs are moving more jointly, and so the speed of change is faster. And that's going to be, that's making me at least quite optimistic that we will see a very fast reduction of emissions from heat pumps altogether. And so more heat pumps will lead to less emissions, and that's the best bet that we have. The second question that we have here is, what about all the noise? I have to say to the person asking the question, so what about it? But I will leave it to Hervé, because it's a very technical question, but the noise can be controlled.
Indeed, I think that's where the industry over the past years has really been working on developing solutions to have within the heat pump, the outdoor unit, and specifically have measures to reduce the noise that is produced by the outdoor unit, so that basically you can almost go in let's say a type of silent experience from a couple of meters distance, or alternatively, and that is then maybe more applicable for a bit larger installations, where there are so-called sound covers, which guarantee a reduced sound production or noise production without, and that's important, without reducing the efficiency of the unit, because of course you can put a box around it, and but then you lose a lot of efficiency. So the industry, both Daikin and also other industry players, have over the past years brought this to the market. I think also there's also some creative solutions that are happening in different markets. Like for instance, in the Netherlands, we see that there a significant of houses are being where heat pumps are being installed on roof or in roof with a special installation, and that's been preferred there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that one. You can check also our website. We have made a paper on sound that explains the topic in a lot of detail. What I can personally add to this debate is that we haven't seen what is possible. It has been a discussion to add a small microphone to a heat pump, so that the heat pump noise emission could be a response to the outside noise that is already there. So if you live in a noisy environment, why do you have to fulfill a requirement that is coming for the whole area? If you live next to a street, for example, noise levels will increase in the morning, and then the heat pump will not contribute much. So it could actually become more noisy, but when it's getting more silent, you want to adjust that so that you don't disturb the neighbors. Also, putting the heat pump into the proper location is an important point. And here there is great planning tools. So please check the website. There is this sound paper out. Sound is an important topic. We don't want anybody to be annoyed. But also here, the cheaper the unit, as a rule of thumb, the less you can invest on noise protective measures. So there is a bit of a balancing to be found here between what you expect from the unit and what you're willing to pay. So we have 2 minutes left. I think I want to close here. There is a few more items on the agenda. We will see if we can answer them. I think most of them have been answered. The customer journey has been recognized once more. Jan-Erik Nowacki, a very good expert from the Nordics, has said that it took Sweden 20 years. So let's hope we can do it a bit faster and learn from Sweden. I think this learning aspect is really important. So I would like to see more learning from those markets that have advanced already, and we will try to push into that direction also as EHPA via our National Associations Committee. Niels, Hervé, Josephine, would you like to give a final statement? What should we give for the attendance to go home on their way home from today's seminar?
I would perhaps say, well, I would say good. I mean, it was nice to see the good news that sales are increasing, and And I think what you have presented is that there is a huge opportunity there. And I wish you the best of luck in going out and seeking that opportunity, and invite you not to be too little ambitious, you know, to be more ambitious in that respect, and also look inwards, not just think about what others can do for industry, but think what industry can do for yourself and for the rest of us.
Thank you, Niels. Hervé?
Yes, I think on the one hand, yes, I share with Niels the positive evolution that even in the difficult year of 2020, we were as an industry able to grow. Taking also the comments that Niels made, especially on the installer frustrations, let's say, I take this at heart, and I also like the fact that you are considering us to be not enough ambitious. So we'll do our best to express the ambition that we believe to have within us to bring that more out in the open, together with the colleagues in the industry.
Thank you, Hervé. Josephine?
Yeah, I would again also link to this ambition. I would really wish actually that the heat pump market or value chain was as ambitious as the EV market, or would at least go through a similar development, and that everyone would not only see and recognize that heat pumps are the future-proof solutions to be put in place, but also would really act upon it. And for example, now we see all these declarations from car manufacturers that they are completely switching to EVs. Well, it would be great if we see the same in the heat pump market, and also for consumers, that is for them, yeah, there's no doubt anymore that this is a future-proof solution, and they go for that. So that's a bit of a wish or an outlook. And yeah, we will, of course, as EHPA, keep working towards that.
Thank you very much. I can stress that this is true. We will not be complacent. And my understanding is also in the industry, there's a lot of people that are ambitious. So this will continue. With slightly better market conditions, it will actually be amplified. And we are in a situation where more actors are joining this industry. That's what I can tell you. I receive on a weekly basis, for sure, a call by an investment fund, by other investors that say, what can we do to join this industry? What are you doing? Is that something that could be interesting? How can we bring our competency when it comes to mass production, energy efficiency improvements, economies of scale to this industry? There is bodies that now look at how to mass manufacture. So this idea of the croissant, the heat pump as a croissant that you can enjoy with your morning coffee. Maybe we have to make a nice picture out of this now, Niels. And I would like to close by thanking all of you for the contribution. Also the audience, there was a good chat and a good question and answer here happening. We had more than 40 questions. So thank you very much for your contribution. If we didn't answer your question in detail, please come back to us and contact us, and then we can continue the debate, which we will inevitably have over the next decade or more. Have a nice morning and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.